Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming, and I apologize for being late. If we could have my slides up, please. Thank you. So, Mexico traffic's really bad, isn't it? Yes, I gave myself 15 minutes to get here. Actually, I gave myself an hour to get here. I was supposed to only take 15 minutes. It took me an hour and a half. So, I'm going to ask you some questions first. How many of you think of yourself as developers, programmers? Some of you. Okay. I have some good content for you today. I also gave a more in-depth presentation yesterday for programmers. Now, how many of you work with nonprofits or the government, some sort of social service organization? Great. I worked for nonprofits for 10 years, and I still love the work. So, I'm going to talk to you today about Google Fusion Tables. Now, how many of you have used Google Fusion Tables before? Not very many. Great. So this is going to be an introductory talk, which is what I planned. This didn't work, so they want me to try this again. What did I press? There we go. Okay. So, let me give you just a little bit of history. In 2005, Google launched the Google Maps API. And we said to the world, it's really easy. This is all you have to do. Now, if you're an engineer or a programmer, imagine for a moment that you're not. And imagine what this looks like to you. This was the engineer's reaction. They said, cool. They went out and they built 600,000 websites in the last 6 years. They built 100,000, they built a billion KML files, which was used for Google Earth. Engineers loved the Google Maps API. But non-engineers, responded differently. They said, can't we just do that in Excel? Now, Google's an engineering company, and we decided that, no, you couldn't. So for 4 years, we said, no, we don't want to do that. We want you to build code because everybody should build code. It's only HTML and JavaScript, right? No problem. Well, it was a problem. We had lots of mapping going out there. We were the most used mapping platform in the world, but still, many of you in this room couldn't do it. And many of you wanted to do it in Excel. So we decided, yes. At last, we are going to let you map your data without actually having to do code. But we're engineers still at Google. And so we decided that, yes, we would let you do it without code, but if you use code, it could be even better. So I'm going to show you examples from all of this. Okay, so what are the basic features of Google Fusion Tables? The basic features are you upload tabular data, that's spreadsheets or a KML file. You upload it to Google, to Fusion Tables. Then you can collaborate on that data, share that data with your friends, and then visualize the data in a variety of different formats. Now I'm going to be talking mostly about mapping, but I'm going to show you a few examples of things that are different kinds of visualizations. So how is this different from Google Docs? How many of you use Google Docs? All right, so you probably all know you have spreadsheets. You can load data into a spreadsheet and visualize it. That's easy, right? We give you 100 megabytes to upload for a single table. 250 megabytes for your entire account. And if you buy Premiere, you get 10 gigabytes of data for Fusion Tables. And you can actually buy more from us. And we give you direct integration with the Maps API, and we give you much better visualizations that are available in, say, Google Spreadsheets. So this is a sample here. And I'm going to come back to this sample and to this table. But I want you to take a look at something here. This is the things to keep in your mind. There are what we call polygons here to describe the boundaries of ecoregions in Australia. That is, regions that have the same kind of terrain: desert, mountain, beach, whatever. And if you click on one of these polygons, you get data about that ecoregion. This is an organization, not Google, that made this table. Oh, and by the way, this is a live demo right in my slides, because I'm using HTML for my slides. But here, let me show you. Click on that. And my connection's a little slow, and I'm not getting... There we go. So you see there, clicked on that, and we got how many plant species? 1,600 plant species, 387 bird species, the population per square mile, and the name of that ecoregion. And this was all done by somebody not using code. So let me give you an example here. Let me show it to you. If you have a Gmail account, which sounds like almost all of you do, you have a Fusion Tables account. And this is just going to take a moment to load up. This is what the data looks like. Do I have a pointer on this? No, I don't. Okay, so you see there's a column. Number of plant species, number of bird species, the population per square kilometer, and then this KML that describes the ecoregion, a shape. Now, we uploaded this. Now, all you have to do is click on Visualize and Map, and you have a map. And I'm going to tell you a secret that the people from marketing don't want me to tell you, which is, if you use this just within Fusion Tables, you can have a completely private map and not share it with the world. And it's free. And that's the only way you can do that on Google's infrastructure. So don't tell marketing that I told you that. But anyway, that is possible. That's if you're using it completely within Google Fusion Tables. If you want to share it with the world, then it's different. Now, this isn't my table, so I don't have rights to it. I don't have the ability to modify the styling. But what they did is they styled each of these polygons. They gave it a color based on a single field, the number of bird populations in that ecoregion. The number of bird species, sorry. And so the darker it is, the more birds there are. And they did it right through the user interface. Okay, I'm going to speed on to something else, because okay, so I'm going to show you a few other examples so you can get a sense of what this actually looks like. This is one I did at the keynote yesterday. This is Mexican population by state. So you see it's a table. I got the population off of Wikipedia. And I got somebody shared a public Fusion table. That means you can use their data without even asking them. But they get credit for it. And they shared the shapes of the different regions in Mexico. So I just got the boundaries for the different states and combined that table, merged the table with this table of population that I got from Wikipedia. And I click on Visualize and Map, and there I have a map. And I can click on any one of these and get the population at the different, that's just going to take a moment to come up. Any one of these and get the population in the year 2000, 2005, and 2010. Okay, so let me show you something else. I actually need to log into a different account to be able to manage this one. So let me go back into that table and visualize map. So you see, when I was logged in before, I was actually logged in on my personal account, mostly because I was in a rush to get here and thought I had the time to do it here. I logged into the account that owns this, and now if you'll see up at the front, up at the top rather, you'll see a bunch more links for configuring styles and doing fun stuff. So let me show you how I got the polygon data. I styled the polygons. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. Oops, that's a lot more. Okay. Is my mic on? My mic's on. Okay. So what I did, and we're going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit more, is I clicked on Configure Styles, and I selected Polygons Fill Color, and I selected Show a Gradient. So with this gradient, I select a color range based on the data in the column in 2010. And I put the range of population 0 to 25 million. And I click Save, and I'll show you, I can actually, if I click Save, that'll actually just repopulate it since it's the same map style. And then if I click on this, I get an info window. Let me show you what the info windows look like. You can also change this basic info window here to show to change what's going to show when it pops up. Now, I've got a lot to get through, so I'm not going to go into too much of this. But when I post my slides, you can play with the demos. Okay. All right. So my things got a little messed up. Let's go back here. Okay. So let me show you a different one. I want to show this one because I want to show a different way of visualizing things. So in Texas, they recently had a campaign for governor, and a local newspaper there said they wanted to show where the candidates were traveling. So they put in a table of all the places they were traveling. Now take a look here. This location is in an address. It's not in a latitude and longitude. It's not in a KML file. If all you have are addresses, we can still geocode that data for you. We can still put it on a map. So, just so I can show you the map, this is what it looks like. And they chose different color of the icons to represent the different candidates. Blue for Democrat, red for Republican, which has become traditional in the United States. But if I click on Visualize Storyline, I get a different visualization. I can actually customize this so that I'm showing a timeline of the different events. And so I'm going to change the title of the event to event, and I'm going to change the description to the location, and then I'm going to set a couple of things here, and I click on one of these, and I get a full featured info window. So very easy to control how this visualization looks. And then if I click on this, I can click on embed code, and this is just copy and paste code. If you're familiar with YouTube, you might have seen like embed codes for the Flash videos that you just embed into your blog or into your web page. That's exactly the same here. So if you have somebody who's doing your website, you just hand them this code, and they put it in the right place, and you have this visualization embedded directly in your application, in your web page. Okay. So go back to here. Now, people are using this in a lot of different ways. This is the Guardian newspaper. Has done a series of articles with using data in fusion tables. And here they mapped the drug war murders in Mexico in fusion tables. And so you see here, this is a major UK newspaper. They developed this chart in fusion tables, and they put this map, which I just zoomed out of, and they put this map directly in there using fusion tables. Now, the guy who does this, Simon Rogers, he's not a programmer at all. He doesn't have any programming background. He does this completely through the Google Fusion Tables interface. And then he makes the data available. You can actually download the data, and he shows you different tables of the data and how it's generated. So really powerful visualizations done very easily without any coding capabilities. When I post when I post this, you can look at some of the other examples that I have. But one thing I wanted to highlight here is that there's a site called Natural Earth Data. And what they did is they put they put all their data online into fusion tables. Now, what data do they have? They have boundaries of every major administrative unit in the world. So country boundaries, state, province boundaries, prefecture boundaries, district boundaries, all the major administrative units in the world. They also map countries that are disputed, small, minor countries. They have lots of really interesting tables. So you can take a look at this. They're providing the data, so Google obviously makes no guarantees about it, but it's very useful. And the map that I showed you of the Mexican population was based on one of these tables. And there's so much data that this is actually a table of all their tables. So you can look at one of these individual tables to see the data that you're looking at. Okay. So there's better mapping with code. Now, I know a lot of you aren't programmers. My focus here is going to be just to show you the capabilities that you can do using the Google Maps API. But let me talk to you about some of the benefits of using code. There's a direct integration with the Google Maps API. So 2 lines of code, and you can add a fusion table to a map that you put on your website. Now, you remember that first page that I put in the beginning, there was code. That just another line or 2 of that code, and you have a map on your website. We also have a direct API. So if you want to write an application that uploads data directly to fusion tables, you can do that. And people are doing that. I spoke with somebody at this event yesterday, who's probably still around. He's gathering traffic data in Guatemala and other places from all his friends who are using a web page that he just has them load up, and it loads the data directly into fusion tables. And you can do some interesting spatial queries. So you can do things like, with one more line of code, you can say, show me everything within a specific bounding box. So everything that's within this box or within a circle radius. Or find me the 10 things that are nearest to a particular point. And we just launched a way that you can dynamically style the map through JavaScript. So let me show you an example. This is that same Mexico population map that I showed you before. Same fusion table, but this is actually a web page. This is a web page that I loaded it into using the Google Maps API. Very simple, and I can dynamically query it. Just show you a couple of quick things. I can select here those states that have populations over 1 million. Now it turns out most of the states in 2000, this is using 2000 data. Most of the states had over 2,000 data. So if I want to narrow it down more, had over 1 million population. If I want to narrow it down more and say over 5 million, that's those states. So you see very quick and easy integration with the Maps API. Now let me tell you something else, and this is going to be probably mostly for the engineers here. The way that we are showing this data is that we're actually loading in an image over the map. This is what's called a clickable raster image. And the reason that's important is that it has a very high performance. Now, the Google Maps API was designed to be used with mobile devices. And if you're loading an image, and you just have one image that covers the screen, and you just detect where somebody clicks on it to get the information on what they're clicking on, that's a lot more performance than trying in the browser to draw each of these polygons and change their styles. So why that's important is it lets you display large amounts of data on a Google map. Now let me give you an example. For Google I/O this year, which is our big developer conference, one of the engineers did a test. He took the most high-end MacBook Pro, basically this machine that I'm using right here, and he created, using the JavaScript API and just a very basic marker, he created 100,000 markers in the map, and it took 36 seconds. And then every time he dragged the map, it had to redraw all those markers. So it was basically unusable. With Fusion tables, it loaded in 5 seconds, and every time you dragged the map, it just dragged along with it. Clickable raster files give you a lot more performance, which is important for two reasons. One, it actually works on the device. It works fast, and you can display large amounts of data, up to 100,000 objects, 100,000 features. But two, when somebody is downloading that onto their mobile device, they're not using all that bandwidth. It's not costing them money for that download. So you're saving your users money, and you're saving them time. And you're actually encouraging them to use your map. This one needs to refresh here. Okay, so this is that same Australia map that I showed you before. And I'm just going to kind of go through this for the engineers quickly. You'll see that the colors are actually different. And it's done without ownership of the table. They were able to style the data in the Maps API to change the color of many of the polygons. So you see these used to be much more varied, and they're all the same. And this is a bright blue. So they changed this to bright blue where the population of birds was over a certain number. The number of bird species, sorry. So you can do this dynamically within the Maps API, and you can actually do it in response to a user request. So if a user says, highlight everything in here where the bird species are over 500 bird species in an area, you could give them that button and allow them to do that, and it would restyle the map automatically. Okay. So let me show you some other things that you can do with the Maps API. Now this was a table of restaurants that one of my colleagues put together. And I loaded into this Maps API application. So what you see there is all these restaurants. But when I click on the map, it says, find me a circle within the radius of this circle. So find me everything within 1,000 meters, so a kilometer, of where I clicked on the map. So it's selecting dynamically while I'm clicking on the map. It's selecting the things that are within this circle. Now you can do that with a bounding box as well. And it's highly performant. You can see if I click over here, it loads very quickly. Oh, and you might notice over here, this is a different tape. This is a different set of data. What I did was I took the query, I queried directly against the table, and I said, give me these results, and then I did something with them. I took the results and I found, okay, everything within this range, how many fit into the different categories. Basically had it count by category. So you see interesting thing, there are 23 stadium concessions within that area. And that's because in that area there's a stadium there. There are 3 wholesale food markets. There are 2 candy counters with less than $1,000 in inventory. I don't know where he got that data, but interesting, you can do things that you can synthesize the data in very interesting ways. And you'll see down here at the bottom, this is what that query actually looks like. So for the engineers, that just looks like SQL. So for the non-engineers, if you're handing this off to an engineer, it looks like something they're very familiar with. Almost everybody who knows programming knows databases. Am I out of time? I'm out of time. I'm very sorry. Anyway, that's it. One last point. If you have shapefiles, if you use geographic information systems, there's a website that you can use called ShapeEscape. It's linked in my docs, and you can load your shapefiles directly into Google Fusion tables without having to do any code. You just have to give it permissions to load it into your account. And I gave you a bunch of other resources in there as well. So again, thank you all for coming. And I'll be available for questions outside afterwards. Thank you.